Obama went on to become the first African-American editor of the Harvard Law Review, breaking barriers. Beto crashed into them, causing a collision while driving drunk, then fleeing the scene to avoid accountability. His charges were dropped as people of color languished behind bars for far less. Youthful indiscretions or threads in a lifelong pattern revealing an indelible sense of entitlement.
Wow.
That was a clip from a new ad from the conservative group Club for Growth as it takes on Beto O'Rourke. Let's bring it right now. Former congressman from Indiana, currently the president of Club for Growth, David McIntosh. We go way back. Also with us, managing editor of The Beat, Tiffany Cross. So, David, I got to ask you, were you as critical as I was at the end of the 2000 campaign when somebody dug up George W. Bush's DUI arrest?
I was actually quiet about that. I think I was recovering from running for governor at the time. But, you know, the key message here, Joe, is that Beto O'Rourke is not what he's portraying himself to be. He's not a man of the people. He's really a guy who's out for himself, and the ad shows that.
You mean like Donald Trump?
I don't want to comment about Donald Trump. What we're saying in this ad is you've got a guy who's very charismatic, and we have to take him seriously because we saw what he did in Texas. We were supporting Ted Cruz, and he came out of nowhere. But his background is white privilege, and when he served on the city council there, his main project was to demolish a poor Hispanic neighborhood and use eminent domain to turn it over to his father-in-law.
David McIntosh, did you just use the term white privilege? Did you really? I'm just curious. Did you just say white privilege?
You know, the interesting thing about that, Joe, is after we ran that ad, Beto has actually embraced that and was explaining to people in Iowa he does have white privilege, and that's why he's running for president, so he can help them overcome that.
Did his daddy give him $200 million to turn into a $9 billion debt? I mean, when we're talking about white privilege,
yeah.
Donald Trump is at the head of the class, right?
So let's put it this way. At this point, we're thinking about the Democratic primary, and what we're trying to do is talk to voters in Iowa who will vote in that primary. And so we use language and issues that they care about.
So if we were talking about the issues that you and I cared about when we were in Congress, it would be the deficit, cutting the deficit, cutting the national debt. That's higher than it's ever been. Donald Trump has added $1 trillion. We got $1 trillion deficits for as far as I can see because of Donald Trump and his policies. But Beto O'Rourke, at least, I can't believe I'm in a position now to defend Beto O'Rourke after his first week on the campaign trail. But at least Beto O'Rourke at one point was for entitlement reform, for saving Social Security and saving Medicare. Donald Trump's not even for that.
You know, I appreciate Beto at one point being for that. I doubt he's still for that because he'll get wrapped with a lot of pretty negative ads. We've seen him when Paul Ryan was for that, you know, grandma being thrown over the cliff. But I think what you're going to see from him is a lot of platitudes. You said it well the other day, kind of a campaign based on a bunch of goop that really doesn't make sense. I think what voters in this race are going to be looking for on the Democratic side is who's going to reflect for them the values they care about, and frankly they're going to look for somebody who can compete well against Donald Trump because they hate him, they don't want him to be president. On the Republican side, it's pretty sewed up that Trump's going to get the nomination, and it'll be a tough, very tough general election.
So, Tiffany, you look carefully at this field. It's a big field, a growing field. It'll probably get bigger in the next week or two when Joe Biden finally makes it official. What's the impact over the last week of Beto O'Rourke hopping into this race?
Well, I think, first of all, I have to say my head is still spinning that a conservative group is calling out white privilege with Donald Trump in the House, but I will move on to the Democratic field. I think Beto enjoyed a lot of generous coverage from the media. I think a lot of people did look at that and compare it to the amount of coverage that women received and people of color in this race received, and there was something disproportionate about that, and so that has helped drive some of his popularity. I do find it, though, interesting interesting that when Beto was in Iowa, I don't think this ad prompted him because he's been talking about white privilege for a long time. I do want to, I think it was interesting, and I applaud him for calling out his own privilege in a room full of people in Iowa, which is 90% white, and calling out some of the privileges that he's enjoyed. But when he ran for Senate against Ted Cruz, he spoke very openly about the police brutality issues, which I think resonated with a lot of voters, not just voters of color, but all voters.
Dave, given the level of discourse in American politics, the level of lying, manipulation, personal attacks, avoidance of history, lack of character in the President of the United States, how can you put out an ad like that and further take this system into the sewer?
Well, first of all, I don't think it takes the system into the sewer.
You don't?
Just watch. You're going to see ads that are much more in the sewer. This is about a guy who says, I'm for the people, but his whole record shows he's not. He's for himself. He was for his father-in-law.
You're talking Trump now.
No, I'm talking Beto O'Rourke.
Oh.
Yeah. Beto O'Rourke, face it. That's what he's about.
But
Why
it
don't you
sounds
face
like
Trump?
Why don't you face Beto O'Rourke?
Why don't you face
That's
the
what we're
President
talking about.
of the
That's
United
We are
States, right?
facing
Behavior.
Beto O'Rourke.
Because we're talking about Beto O'Rourke.
But here,
No, we're talking about you in the ad. That's what we're
That may
talking
be what
about.
you're talking about. Joe
the
invited
purpose
me
of
here
the
to talk
ad,
about
you're-
Beto O'Rourke, and I'm happy to
you're
do
not-
that.
Guys,
Sorry, Joe.
one at a time, please.
No, I was just
Tiffany
gonna say-
first, then David.
Susan.
Or
okay.
is that Susan? I'm
So-
sorry, Susan,
that's
go
all right.
ahead.
So we pretty much can guess that the Club of Growth will endorse the Republican nominee if it's Donald Trump. It's pretty much out there. So we know the Club for Growth is not really reaching out to Democratic primary voters. The purpose of this ad is to take down somebody who I'm asking now, do you believe is the greatest threat to Donald Trump?
I think he's a very serious threat. I mean, we watched what he did in Texas in the race against Ted Cruz. He came out of nowhere. He's got charisma. You've got to give him that. What we're pointing out is what he's selling is not really the authentic person that he claims to be.
Well, political facts said that the claim about his father and father-in-law is mostly false. They've said that the claim about city council and the real estate issue is half true, right? So in some ways, you're trading in the very thing that we have been kind of awash
Well, Eddie,
in.
let me-
David, hold
let me
up,
say-
David. Let me just.
Sure.
What does it? I want to echo something that Mike asked. What do you see as your responsibility for the current state of our democracy? Right? Because this seems to be just simply something that's deeply, deeply disturbing to me.
All right. We're
Our
running out of time.
responsibility
Go
is to
ahead,
tell
answer.
the truth, and I can tell you that ad is backed up by the facts. The record's there. Go look at the city council record. Beto O'Rourke fought over and over again to take away that neighborhood and turn it over to his father-in-law's development company. That's the facts. He can't avoid that.
All right, final thoughts go to Tiffany Cross. Tiffany?
Well, I just think the Democrats have a good problem right now. There are a lot of good candidates on the left side of the field. I think, again, I think the media has to learn their lesson. In 2016, Donald Trump enjoyed a lot of free coverage. We don't see that same amount of coverage going to candidates like Julian Castro or Tulsi Gabbard or some of the other people. So I would encourage that everybody give everybody an equal amount of time and consideration this time around.
And Tiffany, thank you so much for being with us. David McIntosh, I'm sure everyone wants to thank you for giving Beto O'Rourke equal time there. So
Thank
come
you,
back,
Joe.
David.
Great to be
Come
here.
back, Tiffany. And we will.